So is Australia within its sovereign rights to tear up the Port of Darwin deal?
Well, this is a slightly different deal because it's a lease agreement rather than a commercial arrangement, and it would normally be captured under, and it will be captured now going forward under the Foreign Investment Review Board provisions. But the changes we've made to the FIRB Act will allow that deals such as that one to be reviewed once that legislation is fully passed through the Parliament.
How do you feel about that one? Should it proceed as is, or do you think that should be torn up?
Look, I think it needs some further scrutiny. I mean, I'm not intimately familiar with the deal myself. I think it was certainly struck at a different time, and it was struck by an entity that doesn't necessarily isn't conscious of the full gamut of Commonwealth national security interests. So you wouldn't expect them to be aware of some of these things. So I think it deserves a higher level of scrutiny, and I think the changes we've made to the Foreign Investment Review Act will allow us to give it just that.
Okay, a couple of quick ones before we go, Dave. The Biden administration believes that Australia's current climate policies are, quote, insufficient, and wants our Prime Minister to announce more ambitious emission reduction targets because the country cannot rely solely on advancements in technology to achieve net zero by 2050. What do you make of that intervention, those comments from the Biden administration overnight?
Well, look, I'd just say they're it's from a background briefing from an unnamed official within the Biden administration. Yep. I don't know who it is exactly, and I haven't read the full transcript of those remarks. But I do know that the Prime Minister has had a number of productive conversations with President Biden over this. I know that Angus Taylor has had a number of productive conversations with John Kerry, the US Special Climate Envoy, on this. And I know that Australia's actually got a good track record. I mean, if you're looking across the OECD, from 2005 to 2020 to this year, our emissions have actually gone down 19%. The United States have gone down 10%. Countries like Canada have gone down less than 1%. New Zealand less than 1%. So we are proud, I think, of our record of delivery here. And this is ultimately how we're going to get to a net zero world. It's not countries making commitments that they then fail to meet. It's countries actually delivering on those commitments. And I think Australia's got a good track record to sell there.
Well, OK. Well, what about China and its pledge to go to net zero by 2060? I mean, are they getting a leave pass?
I think they need to come to the table at Glasgow and before then to iterate exactly how they plan to do this. Their rhetorical commitment has been to peak by 2030 and to get to net zero by 2060. But I noticed in their last 5-year plan, their big economic document, they don't actually make any reference of interim targets or how they'll get there.
Yeah. Well, just back on the US, it's unveiled, its big announcement later on tonight is going to be that it wants to cut its emissions reduction targets by 50% of 2005 levels by 2030. I mean, that's double what we're doing. Are we not doing enough?
Well, look, firstly, I'd say I've seen that media report, and if that is indeed the case, I'd welcome that. I mean, the United States is the second largest emitter in the world. If you put the US and China and India together, you're talking about well over 50% of global emissions. It's these three countries that are going to need to do the heavy lifting. So, firstly, the fact that the US is back in the Paris Agreement is good. Secondly, the idea that they're going to sign up to a 2030 commitment is good. Thirdly, I'd just say let's see what they do. I mean, our commitment at the moment is to 2030. We're not actually due to make another commitment in the next commitment period until 2025. But Australia's going to be mindful of what other countries are doing and international opinion on this issue. We recognise that we can only solve this challenge with other countries. We don't want to disadvantage ourselves unnecessarily in doing so. But if the whole world is moving more quickly towards this goal, well, I expect that Australia will play our part there as well. OK.
Hey, just finally, Dave, there is a stoush going on that involves our new Trade Minister, Dan Tehan, and his counterpart in the UK, Liz Truss. Her team has apparently labelled Dan Tehan inexperienced and has accused post-Brexit trade talks with us as going glacially slow. What do you make of that?
Well, firstly, the charge that Dan Tehan is inexperienced is grossly wrong. I mean, I used to work with Dan Tehan as a diplomat in the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. Dan is an experienced trade diplomat. He worked for Mark Vaile, our Trade Minister, for a number of years, including on our Australia-US FTA agreement. So Dan is vastly experienced in this portfolio and he'll be a great Trade Minister. The other thing I'd say is, look, you know, it's been 50 years, I know, since the United Kingdom has negotiated a free trade agreement, not since they entered Europe in 1972. So they're pretty new to these sorts of things. But this isn't the way you conduct negotiations, by briefing against your counterpart in public. You're much better off having frank and fulsome and forthright discussions in private, but using a megaphone to try and conduct them or shame your counterpart it's amateurish.